I'd spent the past, almost 20 years working for various venture-backed startups in a variety of industries. For me, the excitement was always, figuring out hard problems and thinking like a scientist and being lean. And I had most recently been working in the VC platform space. So equity crowdfunding, alternative funds. I most recently was at a company that was offering capital to startups using AI. So I'd learned a little bit about AI. And I'd also looked at deals and helped fundraise for deals that were in the ag tech space. And the thing that I learned there was that it's really a workforce automation play, that we can't produce the food that we need to survive without labor that's becoming increasingly inaccessible. And so when I got a call from a recruiter about the Beewise team, the idea of automating part of the beekeeping industry made tremendous sense. And it just so happened, as things tend to do, there was a lot of synchronicity with other parts of my life. I had been on a nonprofit board bringing healthy, culturally sensitive food to low income New Yorkers, and working with farmers and farmers markets in New York. And I was thinking a lot about the supply chain of our food. I'd also just purchased a small hobby farm and was thinking about growing cycles. And so this all seemed really aligned with my interests. And I really enjoy the founding team as well.
Yeah, I mean, Beewise is such an interesting organization. I think it's fascinating to like learn about, read about, then you see it and you're like, holy cow, this is, I mean, it's super interesting. I encourage anybody to go look at the videos or check out the website. But do you want to just explain like how do you talk about Beewise to somebody who's whether they're in the industry or not, like how do you explain Beewise to people?
Yeah, absolutely. There are some things about the way that our food is pollinated and the way that commercial beekeeping work that I certainly didn't know before joining the company. And I want to clarify. So more than 75% of the food that we eat wouldn't be on our plates if it weren't for bees. So colony collapse and colony loss of bees is a fundamental threat to our well-being as a species. And then beyond that, in terms of how our food gets pollinated, I think we think about beekeepers in some sort of, wild pasture or garden with bee boxes that are stationary, but actually commercial beekeeping is extremely migratory. Beekeepers spend a tremendous amount of time driving around from site to site with hives, moving hives to and from pollination events that happen at different times of year throughout the growing cycle. Because bees after they pollinate a fruit, can become a pest. You don't want them there 24/7. So beekeepers are on the road constantly, and that means a big transit footprint, and it also means that for a large commercial beekeeping operation to adequately inspect and treat bees the way that you'd want to, or the way that you would treat your backyard hobby hive, becomes really prohibitive. And I think there are a lot of things, if you read about the threats facing bees, it is related to climate. They're very sensitive to extreme weather conditions. And that's both just weakening their hives, but also if there's a change in the timing of a bloom, or there's even a lot of monoculture, it can make bees very unhealthy. And then labor exacerbates that. The mite treatment that you would want to give them, because varroa mites are really devastating bees all over the world, the care you'd give them becomes really difficult. But there are really good best practices for taking care of bees and preventing colony loss that suddenly become feasible with remote inspection and remote treatment. And that's where Beewise's bee homes come in. And in 2019, the company was founded by our co-founders or CEO, Sar Safra and Ellie Radziner, who's a beekeeper, who just thought there's got to be a better way to do this. Can we put a robotic arm and cameras with computer vision and machine learning into beehives so that we can see what's going on in real time and treat in real time without all the driving, without the labor, the way that we'd want to. And the good news is that with the bee home colony loss, something that's been getting up past 30-40% some years, something that never used to happen. It has everything to do with extreme weather and climate change and all sorts of other existential threats to bees like mites, pesticide, you name it, things that we're doing to our natural environment. We can keep those rates below 10%. We can cut them beyond in half. So again, it was a no-brainer for me to join the company, and I'm really excited to tell this story to people. We improve crop yields. We our primary customer, commercial growers, but we're also on a mission to save bees.
Yeah, it strikes me as the timing of this is so necessary because you have climate which just continues to get more unpredictable as we see change, right? Which affects bees, which you said are kind of delicate creatures and very sensitive to the changes. At the same time, you have technology changes where some of the things that you have in your product would have been cost prohibitive not too long ago, right? Or maybe the technology wouldn't have been as sophisticated to do what it does. So it just feels like the timing is, to me, as an outsider, it feels like the timing is right for this. Do you want to just elaborate a little bit more about the differences between kind of traditional commercial beekeeping and then like what your product and technology can do? Because it's fascinating to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to, I think, definitely touch on a few things about, challenges or perceptions or about cost of technology. I think when we go to shows and we talk to growers and beekeepers, there's a sense of, oh, the robotics and the hardware here must be so expensive. It's really more about knowing what to do with the data and to understand how to take care of bees. The cost of robotics have definitely come down, and the kind of camera equipment you need to do computer vision is the kind of thing you and I have in our phones. But I think being able to tell that story and to get beekeepers on board, there've been a couple of important things that we've learned. First, I think we've changed our delivery model a little bit. I think when we launched, we were interested in trying to sell bee homes to beekeepers. Now we want to really experiment with some new delivery models where we lease bees from beekeepers, pay them upfront, and give them the opportunity to actually have guaranteed income and take a lot of the uncertainty out. And by all means, we make money too, right? Our margins are much, much better because of the automation we're doing and our best practices. So we're able to take bees to growers for pollination and basically have a service model with growers that benefits the whole industry and helps make commercial beekeeping something that can be sustainable for many, many years. And we, I think, always face skepticism in an industry like on the grower side. If you go to a big conference like the almond conference that just happened in Sacramento a few weeks ago, you see a lot of autonomous technology. You see a lot of robotics. You see people who are very tech savvy and they're using technology in every aspect of growing anything to improve their returns in weather conditions in a climate that's really challenging. And so they're very comfortable with the idea that there's robotics and there's AI enabling pollination. But on the beekeeper side, there are evangelists who are, great partners of ours who are excited about technology and they love their Tesla. And, one beekeeper was telling me about how he grew up loving Buck Rogers and just, dreamed of space and technology in the future. And this was a no-brainer for him and he couldn't wait to try it. But for other people, we want to show them that this technology is something that we're doing in partnership with them. One thing I really love about how our co-founder Ellie Radsner speaks to beekeepers as he explains what he learned starting a company around product development and the product roadmap, and talks about how conversations that we've had with customers and prospects and people at shows have changed how we are delivering this technology. We're going to be putting out a version of the bee home that fits on a conventional forklift so that it fits with the equipment that beekeepers are already using, and it's easier to drop in the middle of an orchard for pollination. We're going to be changing out the kinds of frames that we use to put inside of the devices to ones that are, again, part of the beekeeper's regular workflow. We're constantly listening and learning and adapting and using lean methodology, which will be very familiar to this audience, but is something new to most beekeepers. And when they hear that, it really resonates.
Yeah. Whenever you're talking with people outside the industry, are there certain misconceptions that you run into around either the solution that you have or maybe just the problem as a whole that you're trying to solve?
I think people know that they need to save bees. And I think that growers are very aware of the importance of pollination to their yield outcomes. And I think a lot of beekeepers know that labor is a core issue. But in terms of the ability to use technology to create efficiency here, and just to have them be aware of the results that we're getting. It's just about being out there and telling the story and talking about what we're doing. And then I think also people want to know when they can have a bee home in their hands. So it's always these are good problems to have, but just being able to move fast enough, which is always the challenge.
Yeah. Whenever you've been able to be part of like a demo and you're showing this to a potential customer, are there certain aspects of your product or technology that like are surprising to them or maybe hard for them to believe, or like what is that initial reaction as they start to learn about it?
I think there are people who think that they, have a unique process or something they're doing that gives them an edge. And I think in some cases maybe they do. Uh, but we're really interested in showing them how this works at scale and does things that they just can't do for thousands of hives. And then, the other thing that, I think I didn't know that I want to clarify is, bee box technology. If you look at a picture of, uh, you know, beekeepers from the turn of the last century, they've got the suit, they've got the wooden box, they've got a smoke canister that they're pumping on the bees. All that is exactly what most beekeepers are using today. Nothing's changed. The last innovation in beekeeping were smoker tech changes 150 years ago. And those wooden bee boxes were designed for honey production, not optimized for pollination. So, the idea that we're really addressing a need that beekeepers customers have is something that I really want people to know also.
Yeah. So since you've been with the organization, are there initiatives that you've been maybe more excited to help lead, or maybe obstacles that you've overcome that you're like really proud looking back, like, wow, we've kind of tackled that? Like what comes to mind when you're thinking about those things?
So I joined at the end of September. So I feel like I'm just getting started, but I always say that startup years are a bit like dog
Yeah.
years. Like it feels like longer than it's actually been in terms of calendar months.
Yeah.
But just to go out and meet growers and beekeepers and have that moment of that aha moment when we talk to them has been really inspiring, and it's helped me understand really how to tell the story about how we're partnering with the whole industry. And then I think it's also really gratifying to, whether it's journalists or investors or just concerned citizens who are thinking about ESG or about the health of our planet more broadly, to tell something about the urgency and about the scope of this problem, because I think people don't know. One story that I've been telling is, I don't know if you remember a few months ago, Hurricane Ian hit Florida. There's a lot of coverage about the damage and the destruction, but it took a few months to come out. I think the New York Times covered it maybe just this past weekend, that over a fifth of all of the commercially kept bees in the United States were in the path of that hurricane. It's been devastating. I think we don't even know how devastating yet. And that is directly related to climate change. And if something else were threatening, one fifth of something that's a major lever for the food supply, I mean, that would be, red alert, major global crisis. And I think that's the scope of what's happening with bees. And I want people to know that. And I'm really proud to say also that we've been able to start helping beekeepers in Florida. In particular, there's a beekeeper who we'd been working with. His name's Luke Cantu, and he lost 1.6 thousand hives out of 6,000, which is a decent beekeeping operation. He also lost his total honey crop, and the pepper tree bloom that he was counting on to be able to feed those bees was completely knocked out by the hurricane. And that's devastating. And rather than having to sell more bees from his operation to recover, because of our business model, we were able to offer him cash up front for pollination and help him get moving, and get his back on his feet. And I think that's what we want to do for the whole space and do for bees.
That's what's fascinating to me is the ecosystem is so interconnected and all of these pieces matter so much. And one thing goes wrong to that degree, it could really have serious impacts down the road. And a lot of times the general public has no awareness of this. Like we just don't know how all of this stuff fits together. But for me, it's really fascinating. And I think for our team as well, just to learn about these solutions and who's putting energy into trying to progress it forward and what can we do that isn't 100 years old method, to improve how we do this. So I mean, how do you look at it? What do you see as, I mean, so far it's still in some ways early days for you with Beewise, but like what do you see as has been the most rewarding aspect of it so far?
I think for me, it's being mission driven. There were recruiters coming to me who were interested in my AI background and what I've been doing at my last company around AI, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we've got this AI solution to help us frack better." I was like, I wouldn't describe it as better, and I don't think that this is the job for me. I feel really good working for a mission driven company and being able to tell this story. And I think that a big challenge is storytelling. I think we think a lot about performance marketing as marketers, and when you speak to VCs, it's like always like an LTV to CAC kind of conversation. But one thing I really enjoy about our CEO Sar Safra is he really appreciates storytelling and wants me to put energy there, and I completely agree because you're saying it, people don't know. That's 100% right, Justin. I mean, I think a term that I've been using a lot lately to talk about the communications problem that I have, or challenge, opportunity, whatever you want to say opportunity, is VUCA, right? So like volatility, uncertainty, chaos, and ambiguity. And like there are these like complex multifactorial models impacting the health of bees. Something like mites. I think because of globalization and other factors, like now they're getting all over the world in places there didn't used to be those kinds of bee pests that can decimate the immune system and the health of a bee. There's these extreme weather events. It can make it too cold for bees that can knock out their food sources. There's bad agricultural practices where in the previous generations, agriculture was built around machines. And so we're going to have monoculture where there's one type of crop and, for thousands of miles. And, there's a very specific way that the tractor needs to enter the field. So we're not going to put in ground cover. And, that's like, imagine if you or I ate nothing but Cheetos for months, that would be very unhealthy. Then there's economic pressure on the labor market, and it has these multiplier effects that sometimes are quite negative on bees and on our biodiversity.
Yeah, it's so true. It's really nice, I think, when you're going to put in the effort that, people like you and I put in, like to know that all of this is going in the right direction and we're making at least the impact that we can make. I think it helps give you that extra shot of energy when you need it at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a lot easier to put in the work when you really believe in what you're doing, and you believe in the product. It's not like the big Zig Ziglar thing when he was out selling aluminum pans. Is he like really believed they worked? That's really makes it easy to put the work in and tell the story. I think it's just about putting it in the context of these big conversations about climate tech, and that, yeah, we're not reversing climate change, but we are climate change first responders.
I do wonder if we should talk more about the product itself. The technology, I think it's, I mean, when I was watching the video, I was like, this is super cool. Like this compared to the old way, it's so interesting to me how you're combining not only like robotics but also AI to do it all. When you're doing demos, do you have people who are just looking at it like, is this even possible? I mean, are there people who are like, no, this can't possibly work? Or like,
I
I would
think that's
think there would be, but
probably a response that people gave our founders a few years ago. I think in terms of like a marketing channel that's super effective, I think just seeing bee homes in the fields of their neighbors throughout the
yeah,
growing regions of our country is really powerful. I mean, what a billboard to see a giant beekeeping robot out in the fields. I love that. I love it when people tell me that they've seen bee homes out in the fields. And yeah, I think they also I want to make sure that people understand that if other companies have technology enabled beehive solutions. But having data is never sufficient. And again, I think people who have been in big data or AI related fields or made those kinds of investments understand that it's a little bit garbage in, garbage out, right? If you have a lot of unstructured data or you don't really
hmm,
know exactly what to do with it, what the use case is, just sending a beekeeper or a grower a tremendous amount of data that either isn't contextualized, and we don't just have AI recommendations, they're backed up by our beekeepers, and our beekeepers are looking at this data and working with beekeepers and working with growers to make sense of what this means and what they should do. And then also, imagine getting all this information that's in real time that needs to be acted on now, but you just can't afford to get out to that field where that remote site where that bee home is, or that other, excuse me, traditional bee box is. What you can't make the kinds of interventions that are going to move the needle. So being able to act remotely and we focused on automating beekeeping treatment that's the most labor intensive for beekeepers and happens the most. We don't do absolutely everything. We've tried to really 80/20 it to be the important, really labor intensive stuff. So to be able to do that and like how that adds up in terms of appropriate treatment and labor savings, I think that's really important to understand that the sort of compounding difference you get there.
that's cool.